Some of the more fascinating pieces of evidence in South America have come out recently about these channels and pathways that they've found in the Amazon that could not have been created any other way but by humans creating irrigation, humans creating, like, it appears like grids, like a city grid.
The Amazon is a colossal mystery, and it's one of the subjects that I explore in depth in America before. First of all, to give some basic figures, the Amazon basin is huge. The Amazon basin is 7 million square kilometers. Within it, 5.5 million square kilometers remains almost entirely unstudied by archaeologists. Five and a half million square kilometers is the size of the entire Indian subcontinent.
For many people, the Amazon is a symbol of the Earth's greenery. Acres and acres and acres of lush rainforests. However, what may shock them to hear is that the Amazon was not always a forest, as it contains ancient civilizations that flourished in the area. This fact has been brought to the mainstream thanks to Joe Rogan's expert guests, and in this video we join them as they reveal the sudden discovery of ancient civilization in the Amazon rainforest. The Amazon is massive, but looks way different from what it was many years ago. The rainforest is located in South America and covers an area of 5,500,000 square kilometers. The Amazon basin, which contains the forest, is slightly larger, covering more than 7 million square kilometers. The basin is the area that drains into the Amazon River, which means the water from the basin eventually flows into the Amazon. With such a large area of forest cover, the Amazon rainforest can be found in 9 South American countries. Brazil has 60% of the rainforest, Peru has 13%, Colombia has 10%, and the remaining 17% is split between Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia, Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana, an overseas territory of France. It is situated between the tropics of Cancer in the north and Capricorn in the south, with the equator, an imaginary line passing between them, making it a tropical rainforest. The area between the two imaginary lines is referred to as the tropics, hence the name tropical rainforest. Throughout the year, the tropical rainforest has a humid season. Because of the tropics, there are no regular seasons such as summer, winter, autumn, and spring in the Amazon forest. These seasons do not affect the land or vegetation between the tropics. Instead, temperatures in the rainforest range from 26 to 30 degrees Celsius all year. This is due to the imaginary equator line, which influences a day-long consistency with 12 hours of sunlight all year round. As a result, there is a constant supply of sunlight, which is a critical component in photosynthesis that powers the rainforest all year. In general, it's this phenomenon that keeps temperatures in the tropics warm, ranging from 22 degrees Celsius to 34 degrees Celsius. Despite this, the forest is mostly damp due to the high humidity levels. The presence of a dense forest cover with over 390 billion individual trees makes the air stuffy and humid, making exploration of the forest difficult. The Amazon rainforest has the world's largest ecosystem. The Amazon River, which runs for thousands of miles and serves as the ecosystem's main foundation, drives this ecosystem. The river basin has a direct impact on the ecosystem, with an average temperature of 26 degrees Celsius and high humidity and rainfall levels. The presence of this hot and humid climate has influenced the presence of various plant and animal species, resulting in the rainforest having the most species for the kingdoms Animalia and Plantae, including many endangered species. Furthermore, it is home not only to wildlife but also to indigenous people who have lived in the forest for centuries. The rainforest ecosystem is so vast that it helps to regulate the planet's atmospheric carbon levels. The Amazon basin is responsible for more than 10 times the annual carbon emissions from fuel consumption. Furthermore, the forest stabilizes various types of soils, allowing for optimal crop production in neighboring regions. Furthermore, the rainforest contributes to the water cycle through transpiration, which benefits farmers miles away from the forest. Droughts are reduced by introducing high moisture levels into the atmosphere. The rainforest reduces water runoff, thereby preventing floods. This is made possible by the soil stabilization as well as the root anchorage of the forest's billions of trees. The forest also influences rainfall patterns, allowing areas thousands of miles away from the basin to receive adequate rainfall all year. The Amazon's hydrological engine is critical to the global and regional climate. Water emitted by plants into the atmosphere via evapotranspiration and rivers into the ocean influences global climate and ocean current circulation. This acts as a feedback mechanism because the process also helps to maintain the regional climate on which it is dependent. There are some animals that can only be found in the Amazon. Reptiles such as the anaconda and the Jesus lizard, yes, the Jesus lizard, are among them, as are mammals such as the howler monkey, golden lion tamarin, jaguar, sloth, spider monkey, and the Amazon river dolphin. Birds such as the toucan and the scarlet macaw, and amphibians such as the poison dart frog and the glass frog. The story of the Amazon is one of people appearing in the forest and disappearing before reappearing. That is a whole lot of appearing, and it also had a heavy human toll. However, most of the evidence of these transitions was lost until new discoveries were made recently thanks to a powerful technology, which Joe Rogan's guest Graham Hancock talks about. We trace the story back to a Spanish explorer named Francisco Orellana, whose account of the Amazon was totally disbelieved. He reported seeing millions of inhabitants in the Amazon, occupying cities with advanced features and covering large areas of land. During his quest for El Dorado in 1542, Francisco de Orellana claimed to have encountered powerful warrior women. He would later name the river they were traveling down the Amazon after Greek mythological women. According to this legend, there were women who cut off their right breast to make it easier to use a bowstring and were thus known as a mastos from the Greek without breast. These Amazons were said to kill male children because they had no use for men other than procreation. Now, while the Spanish audience initially lapped up his words, subsequent explorers that went to the Amazon could not find any traces of the inhabitants that Orellana claimed to see. No cities or even shanty towns were in sight. How could millions of people have vanished from the surface of the earth? Either something extraordinary happened to them, or Orellana lied. They chose to believe the latter, branding the explorer a liar. The accusation remained intact for centuries until, well, new technologies came along. But what really happened to the horde of people and the cities Orellana claimed to have found in the Amazon? Here is Graham Hancock, a guest on Joe Rogan's podcast show, tackling the issue of Orellana's discovery.
The Amazon is a colossal mystery, and it's one of the subjects that I explore in depth in America before.
Hancock agrees the Amazon is a massive mystery and explains why that is so. The explanation is really simple.
First of all, to give some basic figures, the Amazon basin is huge. The Amazon basin is 7 million square kilometers in area. And within it, 5.5 million square kilometers remains almost entirely unstudied by archaeologists.
Due to this issue, scientists concluded that it was recently that humans entered the Amazon.
The view was that humans hadn't entered the Amazon until about 1,000 years ago. And then gradually, little by little, that view has begun to change. And it's begun to change.
However, Hancock believes Orellana did visit the large and many cities of the Amazon, and they later vanished when other explorers went there. But Hancock knows what happened to the human population of the Amazon. They simply died.
What happened was that the Spaniards brought smallpox into the Amazon. Smallpox devastated the local population because there was no immunity to it.
Many of these populations thrived along rivers because they provided easy transportation, excellent fishing, and fertile floodplain soils for agriculture. These were ideal locations for settlements, but when the Europeans arrived, They were the first to be affected and subsequently decimated because the explorers used the major rivers as highways to the interior. The Amerindian population was reduced by at least 90% within the first 100 years of European contact. The majority of the surviving peoples lived in the Amazonian region's remote interiors, either forced there by encroaching Europeans or in smaller groups that had traditionally lived there. Disease was the primary cause of the massive population decline. Smallpox was the first disease introduced to the indigenous peoples. Following epidemics of typhus, influenza, and smallpox in the 15 and 1600s, all traces of living Incan culture were wiped out. Prior to human contact, the Western Hemisphere supported between 90 and 112 million people. To put this already massive figure into context, scientists' estimates for the Americas population in the late 1400s exceeds Europe's estimate for the same period. The reason for Indians' high susceptibility to diseases from the Old World was their isolation. Native inhabitants were completely defenseless against the epidemics because they had never been exposed to certain biological agents, and their lack of knowledge about the diseases only aided the spread of these foreign ailments, as residents stayed with the sick for support rather than using the common European methods of quarantines and isolation. And because European diseases killed off the Amazon's most skilled agriculturalists, much of what was known about cultivating the rainforest ecosystem has been lost. These forest farmers without a doubt relied on a far different agricultural philosophy than that used today, one that sustained significant populations without destroying biodiversity. If their techniques are discovered, they could be useful and even necessary in creating areas of high agricultural productivity without total destruction. Instead of clearing large areas for crops with low yields and short lifespans and pasture land for low-density cattle grazing, perhaps ancient and seemingly profoundly effective methods could revolutionize modern agriculture with minimal environmental impact. But what method did the Amazonian use to produce enough food to support a population of millions of people in the rainforest? Clearing and sowing agricultural fields in an environment like the Amazon was a difficult and time-consuming process without the benefits of iron tools or domesticated animals. Instead, Indians planted trees, resulting in a 20-year return on investment as opposed to 2 or 3 years with a standard low-growing crop. Early Amazonian inhabitants served themselves well by cultivating orchards instead of fields. Indians capitalized on the benefit of rich soil quality by planting trees in the fertile river basin, and the deep-reaching roots of trees helped agriculture survive during the dry season and during periods of drought. Experts now believe that a significant portion of lowland forests, possibly as much as 15%, were organized for human benefit. The concept of a built environment stands in stark contrast to the idealist and traditional vision of all-natural virgin territory. Anna C. Roosevelt, an archaeologist from Chicago's Field Museum of Natural History, and a team of specialists re-excavated the Amazonian site of Marajo in 1990. Their findings revealed compelling evidence that the mound-ridden archaeological wonder likely supported more than 100,000 inhabitants and covered thousands of square miles. According to scientific studies, Marajo's presence enriched the environment rather than causing the typical detriment or stress of a large, densely populated area. The only traces of the settlement, a series of raised lumps of earth, still contain the region's most lush and diverse growth. Hancock reveals a powerful invention that helped the early Amazons succeed in agriculture. They invented a soil named terra preta, or Amazonian dark earth, Amazonian black earth, to be able to feed such a large number of people.
So how did they feed all these people? The answer was they invented a soil. And that soil has a name. It's called terra preta. Archaeologists refer to it as Amazonian dark earths or Amazonian black earth. It's a man-made soil.
The full name is Terra Preta do Índio, which means Indian black earth in Portuguese. Pre-Columbian people purposefully created this unique mineral-rich soil by combining charcoal and animal bones with regular soil to create a highly fertile hybrid ideal for agriculture. The Amazon today has a well-known reputation for thin and poor quality soil, but Terra Preta provided unprecedented life and bounty for its inhabitants. The essential ingredient in terra preta is charcoal, which gives the soil a more substantial quality by latching onto the compounds within it through oxidation, retaining moisture and nutrients. But despite these advantages, charcoal lacks significant nutrients on its own, so Indians supplemented the soil with organic waste such as turtle, fish, and bird bones. Terra preta has higher concentrations of calcium, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur than regular earth. If properly managed, this matter can withstand agricultural stress for far longer than regular soil. Soil ecologists believe they can replicate terra preta to transform thin tropical soil into rich, substantial, self-sustaining, and potentially self-replicating soil. Scientists believe terra preta was formed through a process known as the slash and char method, as described by one expert. Instead of completely burning trees to ash, pre-Columbian farmers simply smolder organic matter to form charcoal before stirring it into the soil. The added benefit of this method was that it released far less carbon into the atmosphere than the now common slash and burn method. Because carbon emissions, or rather an imbalance of carbon emissions, have a well-known negative effect on forests, this ancient method was both efficient and environmentally sensitive. And charcoal has the ability to retain carbon in the soil for nearly 50,000 years. Today, both scientists and locals recognize the value and significance of terra preta. The earth is excavated and sold as potting soil because of its high productivity. Some people work it for years with little fertilization. Estimates for the remaining amount of terra preta vary greatly. Estimates range from 0.1 to 10% of the Amazon basin containing the soil. 10% encompasses an area the size of France. The largest terra preta collections, which typically cover 5 to 15 acres, are found on low bluffs at the edges of floodplains. The material's thickest layers are about 6 feet deep. Soil ecologists do not see a natural pattern for these soil bands, implying that terra preta is a man-made or directed substance. Broken ceramic pieces are also common in the soil, leading credence to human design. All of this information suggests that these people were terraforming the Amazon into a highly productive, sustainable agricultural region, a difficult task that had eluded Europeans for centuries. Unfortunately for the New World's natives, the Old World arrived and both intentionally and unintentionally destroyed everything they had worked for. This is why Hancock believes the Amazon was a human-made forest, contrary to what many scientists believe.
The Amazon is basically a garden. The Amazon is a man-made rainforest. There are certain trees like Brazil nut trees or the ice cream bean tree, which are food crops, which are very, very valuable.
Hancock's position has been backed by new scientific discoveries. In 2013, community ecologist Hans ter Steger and colleagues were catalyzing the Amazon's vast tree diversity. The researchers sampled 1,170 scattered plots far from modern human inhabitants in order to identify over 16,000 different species among the 390 billion individual plants. They then noticed something strange. Despite such diversity, more than half of the total trees were made up of just over 1% of the species. Around 20 of these hyperdominant plants were domesticated species like the Brazil nut, Amazon tree grape, and ice cream bean tree. That was 5 times the amount expected by researchers if chance was the only factor. The hypothesis came up that people domesticated these species a lot, which would have helped their abundance in the Amazon. To test this hypothesis, ter Steger collaborated with archaeologists to examine the number of domesticated species in close proximity to pre-Columbian communities. The distance to these archaeological sites does have an effect on the abundance and richness of domesticated species in the Amazon, ter Steger claims, noting that he and his colleagues were able to plot a decrease in the number of domesticated species as the distance from archaeological sites increased. The researchers also discovered that many of these domesticated species were discovered far from where they originated, raising the possibility that humans transported them to cultivate elsewhere. Cocoa, which is used by some native peoples for beverages and religious ceremonies, was first domesticated in the Amazon's northwestern region, where researchers have discovered a greater genetic diversity, reflecting more time spent there. However, the species is now most common in the rainforest's southern reaches. Ter Steger's study is the largest, most comprehensive analysis of human impact on Amazon flora ever conducted. The inclusion of archaeologists and soil scientists greatly aided the study by adding expertise in proving correlations and scrutinizing whether a species would be likely to grow naturally in a particular area's soil. The study could have far-reaching implications beyond the region's ecological origins. It is hoped that in the future this research can be reverse engineered to assist archaeologists in locating ancient Amazonian settlements and identifying artifacts. Researchers could narrow their search for artifacts in the dense Amazon by looking for areas with higher than expected concentrations of domesticated plant species. And there is more evidence of the presence of people in the Amazon stretching back thousands of years. Mysterious mounds in the southwest corner of the Amazon basin were once the site of ancient urban settlements scientists have discovered. They discovered that beginning around 1500 years ago, ancient Amazonians built and lived in densely populated centers surrounded by kilometers of elevated roadways, using remote sensing technology to map the terrain from the air. The complexity of these settlements is mind-boggling, according to team member Heiko Prumers with the German Archaeological Institute in Berlin. This is the first clear evidence of urban societies in this part of the Amazon basin. The study adds to a growing body of evidence that the Amazon, long thought to be a pristine wilderness before Europeans arrived, was home to advanced societies long before that. For around 10,000 years, humans have lived in the Amazon basin, a vast river drainage system roughly the size of the continental United States. Prior to the arrival of Europeans in the 16th century, researchers believed that all Amazonians lived in small nomadic tribes with a little impact on the world around them. And while early European visitors described a landscape densely packed with towns and villages, later explorers were unable to locate these locations. Archaeologists had yet to confirm the rumors by the 20th century and argued that the Amazon's nutrient-poor soil was incapable of supporting large-scale agriculture and that it would have prevented tropical civilizations similar to those found in Central America and Southeast Asia from arising in the Amazon. However, by the 2000s, archaeological opinion was beginning to shift. Some researchers hypothesized that unusually high concentrations of domesticated plants, as well as patches of unusually nutrient-rich soil, could have been created by humans and could indicate that ancient Amazonians did in fact shape their environment. The hypothesis gained traction after archaeologists reported hundreds of large geometric mounds discovered due to deforestation in the southern Amazon rainforest in 2018. These structures suggested ancient organized societies capable of thriving in one location for years, but there was no direct evidence of settlements. Prumers began researching a group of mounds in the Bolivian Amazon basin outside of the dense rainforest in 1999. A swarm of tree-covered mounds rises above a lowland area that floods during the rainy season. Previous excavations had revealed that these forest islands had human habitation, including the mysterious Kasarabe culture which appeared around AD 500. During one excavation, Prumers and his colleagues discovered what appeared to be a wall, indicating that the area had once been occupied by a permanent settlement. The researchers also discovered graves, platforms, and other evidence of a complex society. However, the dense vegetation made it difficult for them to survey the site using traditional methods. However, by the 2010s, archaeologists were enamored with a LiDAR, a remote sensing technology that uses lasers to generate a 3D image of the ground below. A LiDAR survey of a Honduran valley in 2012 aided in the rediscovery of an ancient pre-Columbian city thought to exist in the area. The jungle had completely overtaken the settlement since it was abandoned in the 15th century, making aerial viewing nearly impossible without LiDAR. In 2019, Prumers and his colleagues flew a helicopter equipped with the LiDAR technology over 6 areas near sites confirmed to be occupied by the Kasarabe people. The team got more than they bargained for, with LiDAR revealing the size and shape of 26 settlements, including 11 that the researchers weren't looking for. A massive task that would have taken 400 years to survey using traditional methods, according to Prumers. 2 of the urban areas were larger than 100 hectares, 3 times the size of the Vatican City. The LiDAR images revealed walled compounds with broad terraces rising 6 meters above ground level. earthen pyramids towered above one end of the terraces. People most likely lived in the areas surrounding the terraces and traveled along the causeways that linked the sites. It is still unknown why these settlements were abandoned after 900 years. The Kasarabi vanished around 1400, according to radiocarbon dating. LiDAR images also revealed reservoirs in the settlements, possibly indicating that this part of the world wasn't always wet, an environmental shift that may have driven people away. Consistent pollen records, on the other hand, show that maize or corn has been grown in the area for thousands of years, indicating sustainable agricultural practices. The discovery of long-lost Amazonian societies changes the general perspective people have of Amazonian archaeology. According to Eduardo Neves, an archaeologist at the Brazil's University of Sao Paulo, he believes that current logging and farming in the Amazon basin are almost certainly destroying important archaeological sites that have yet to be discovered, but that growing interest in Amazonian archaeology may lead to the protection of vulnerable areas. Another piece of evidence of human habitation in the Amazon was trash, literally. According to researchers, ancient trash heaps in Bolivia, used for millennia, now suggest humans explored the western Amazon as early as 10,000 years ago. Scientists focused on a tropical savanna region in the Bolivian Amazon that previous researchers thought was too harsh for ancient peoples to live in. Hundreds of small forested earthen mountains known as forest islands dot these seasonal floodplains. These forest islands were typically thought of as natural in origin, for instance, as landforms cut away by shifting rivers or long-term termite mounds or bird rookeries. But according to carbon dating, 3 of these forested islands are shell middens, piles of freshwater snail shells left by human settlers more than 10,000 years ago. The newly discovered site is the oldest archaeological site in southern and western Amazonia. The fact that under the surface there seemed to be rock-like material surprised Lombardo about the forest islands he and his colleagues investigated. Upon closer inspection, they discovered that this hard material was some sort of shell deposit. Lombardo became suspicious because he couldn't think of any natural process that could have produced such a deposit. The first location the researchers investigated was called Isla del Tesoro, which translates to Treasure Island in Spanish. There is a widespread belief in the Llanos de Moxos region of Bolivia that if a foreigner is interested in excavating a site, it must contain buried gold. Of course, there is no gold, but what soil samples taken from 3 mounds revealed was that they were made of a dense collection of shells, bones, and charcoal. They appear to have formed in 2 stages, an older layer composed primarily of freshwater apple snail shells as well as deer, fish, reptile, and bird bones, and an overlying layer composed of organic refuse containing pottery, bone tools, and human bones. The overlying layer, which contains human bones and artifacts, was clearly formed as a result of human settlement. And while the underlying layer of shells may not appear to be the result of human activity, molecules detected in the underlying layer have been linked to human feces. Radiocarbon dating of 2 of the middens reveals an ancient human presence around 10,400 years ago during the early Holocene period. According to the researchers, hunting and gathering forays brought prey there for preparation, cooking, and eating. Shells and other artifacts accumulated into mounds over 6,000 years of human use. As the climate shifted toward wetter conditions later, the hunter-gatherers may have abandoned these sites. Let's hear what you find most fascinating about the Amazon forest in the comments section below.